This movie is the fourth movie of the Matrix franchise. We have to say it loud and clear that the first movie is still one of the best sci-fi movie ever made. Unfortunately, the two sequels were among the most disappointing sequels ever made. So what about this one? Well, it's really sad to say that this movie is even worse than those two sequels. This movie is probably the biggest disappointment of the year. The original Matrix movie is hugely popular for its very inventive story, mind-blowing plot, hugely creative action sequences, and wonderful fashion style. This movie, on the other hand, has none of them. In terms of story, most of it is just a rehash of the original movie. There's no mind-blowing plot in this one. In return, the movie goes full meta, especially in the first act. It takes the opportunity to take a few digs at major studio IP, the unoriginality of sequels, and audiences' insatiable desire to be bombarded with more of the same over and over again. This meta part was promising at first because it feels like the filmmakers make a promise that this movie will be one of a kind, a super cool sci-fi sequel that go against all of those criticisms. The fact is that after almost 2 hours and 30 minutes, this movie turns out to be one of those bad sequels, a mediocre movie with no originality. It's settling for rehashing the original film rather than reinventing the series. It doesn't offer a compelling reason for its existence other than to squeeze more money out of the Matrix fans. It goes full meta while forgetting to deliver an engaging story. It fails to recapture most of the magic of the first film, as this laborious effort never even comes close. The movie treads over far too much old ground while introducing only a smattering of new elements, none of which are particularly interesting. There are a number of neat ideas at play here, but none are developed enough to feel substantial. It's all surface-level fluff and expository dialogue and nostalgic callbacks for characters stripped of their personalities and human weight. Any cleverness is met with laughably bad execution at nearly every turn here. Even worse, the movie decides it's necessary to separate Neo and Trinity for most of the story, which deprives us of the connection both characters forged in the original trilogy. It makes this movie feel even more like a bad copy of the first, which followed Neo's journey almost exclusively. As the movie progresses, it descends into a series of increasingly drawn-out scenes with a bunch of characters standing around spouting banal, painfully tedious dialogue at each other. Above all, the most disappointing aspect of this movie is the action scenes. The original Matrix movie, even its both bad sequels, are widely known as the movie that always gives the audience inventive and jaw-dropping action set pieces. It really comes as a huge surprise that this new movie has none of them. It's way too much blabbing and not enough action. Not only is there not enough action, but when we do get action sequences, much of it is shoddily staged and generic. This attempt at deep meta-commentary seems to come at the expense of the fight scenes, something that the franchise was known for. This is more depressing because we know that Keanu Reeves has wonderful full fight scenes franchise with fantastic fight choreography in John Wick. It's disappointing and deeply depressing to realize this movie isn't going to offer anything nearly as groundbreaking as its predecessors. They can't even improve on bullet time, which was truly revolutionary. Unfortunately, no such ingenuity here. The combat scenes that are present are either short-lived, laden with messy effects, or replaced with shock and awe antics. This is a huge chunk of the Matrix DNA that's totally missing from this movie. No one could anticipate that this Matrix movie would be a below-average action flick. This is a huge problem, and the less to say about the final scenes, the better. There's some incredibly terrible animation and effects taking place here. This movie is definitely an expensive one to make, so it's truly inexplicable that the final scenes look the way they do, especially in comparison to the much more impressive looking original over 20 years ago. Overall, This movie is so disappointing that we can't really find the right words to describe it. It's not just disappointing, but it's actually really depressing as well. How come they waste so much potential with this expensive garbage? It's really beyond us. Well, if you're just hoping to see both Neo and Trinity again, then this movie might still work for you. Otherwise, it's just completely waste of time.